Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Pete Burden, and I'm your host today on the Healthy Power Alliance podcast. We're using this space to explore what it means to be powerful together, to look at how human power, particularly as it appears in organizations and communities, can benefit other humans and the planet we depend upon. We're speaking with people who are in the middle of doing that, working very practically day to day doing those things, people who think they have theories about how to do it, and people who are studying it academically as well, just to try to work out what works and what doesn't. We do love the theory, we're interested in the theory, but mainly we're interested in the practice. So what people actually do in their day-to-day work. And with all that said, I'm very pleased to have Michele Blair with me today, all the way from Laurel, which is a city in Maryland.
Yes,
And nice to have you here, Michele.
thank you. It's
Great.
nice to be here.
Great. And I don't know too much about you, but I do know that your current role is as a sustainability manager in the city. And I'd love to talk about a little bit more about what that means and the work you're up to. Um, you also told me that you've worked for the city for quite a long time, since the early 2000s. And before that, you'd had experience working in Washington, D.C., in private industry and with the National Institute of Health. So it sounds like you've had quite a varied career. Um, kind of some coordinating, and you've moved into the sustainability area, but also in education. You mentioned education as something that's kind of dear to
Mhm.
your heart. Is that a reasonable beginning of an introduction? Maybe you could add
Yes,
something else.
yes, that's fine. I think, yes, I think that that's accurate. I've been working for a long time in many different um, organizations, and every organization I learned something,
Mhm.
and I see that those lessons can be brought forward into my next step, my next career move. And so here I am. I never really expected to stay with the city for this long,
Mm.
but I'm also a Laurel resident, so I live here. And I have to say that the commute, which is literally about 5 minutes from my home, was a big draw from the hour and a half each way commute to DC. So here I am 22 years later. And so I've really enjoyed my time with the city, and I have, again, been able to grow the position into something that I think is important. I feel has something that we as a city and as especially in the U.S. Because it's not our strong suit, need to focus on. And
Mhm.
how do we get there?
Mhm.
So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Could you also just tell us a little bit about the city? I mean, in terms of, I don't know the scale of it, how many people, things like that.
So the state of Maryland is unique in the sense that we have many municipalities within the state, and a municipality has its own form of legislation and government.
Hmm.
The city of Laurel is located in Prince George's County. We're in the northern part of the county, and we have a form of government that we have our own zoning, and we create our own legislation. So that is a bit unique with
Hmm.
other municipalities don't necessarily have all that. Uh, and we have, I think the last census that we did in 2020 showed that we had a population of 30,000
Hmm.
plus. We are not very big. We're about, I would say, maybe like within a 3 mile radius. I mean,
Oh, wow.
we're small, but we're
Hmm.
condensed,
Mm.
and our own crews collect and provide the city services. So we don't really contract out, which is unique. The
Hmm.
counties contract out. A lot of other municipalities will
Hmm.
piggyback on contracts, but we're unique in the sense that our own crews pick up trash, recycling, and compost. So that has been a great boon to me in developing these programs and the community outreach and the sustainability plan, because I had that flexibility
Yeah.
of being able to work directly with the crews.
With the crews rather than being in some
Right.
other organization where you didn't have
And right.
that
And
relationship.
because I started my career at Public Works as office manager slash recycling coordinator, I got hands-on experience and first-hand experience about what we were hearing from the residents, what the needs were, what we needed to adjust. And because I was an outsider, so to speak, when I came from DC, then I had a fresh take on things. I had a different viewpoint. So I think all those things wrapped together kind of brought it to, in 2021, the mayor at that time, Craig A. Moe, we had created the environmental programs section that was under the city administrator's office. And my goal at that point was to get the city to a point where we actually had a sustainability plan. We actually had a plan about what sustainability was, educating not only the residents, but also educating our staff and, where we could go in the future. So that was a big chunk of my time. And then from there, it evolved into the sustainability division, which is where I am now. And so it's been an interesting experience, and it has been, the downside is that I'm a division of 1.5. The upside of it is that I have a lot of latitude of programs and ideas that I want to create, programs that I want to pilot. It's a very exciting time because I'm able to kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
As opposed to, so that's the upside of not being as defined as some of like at the county level where they have departments and they're very defined and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that wiggle room.
Yeah.
That's good. Downside is that you don't have a lot of money and staff, but that's, I find ways around that.
Sure. Okay, that's great. It sounds like you can just get on with it as well. And over that time while you've been there, I'm guessing you've built quite a lot of good relationships with people. And the scale of it is something about you can kind of know people, isn't there, in all of that? It sounds good. Tell us a little bit more then, can you, about the job of sustainability manager? I think you said you kind of created it as well. And there was this idea of the plan, but I'm sure there's other things involved.
Yes. So building on that, I am the liaison for a lot of the programs and meetings and committees, policy committee meetings with the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments. So I chair the recycling committee, and then I also chair a small jurisdiction subcommittee. Which they actually developed at my request because, as I said, when you have these large meetings, counties and larger states, they kind of they overshadow the small municipalities, and there's so much as a smaller municipality that we can do. So there's a lot of power there. And we were just kind of being overshadowed. So they developed the small jurisdiction recycling committee. So that was exciting. I liaison with the Maryland Recycling Network. I am the vice president of the board of directors, and I'm also the vice chair of the legislative committee. And what that means, it all sounds very fancy. It's my volunteer job, but it is, we work with the legislators in Maryland, specifically on legislation that would impact the environment, recycling the environment. And I bring that back to the city. I develop programs, I apply for grants with my auxiliary person. And again, because no one's done this, I'm really a blank slate. So so right now we received We received a grant from the Department of Energy. We received grants from Sustainable Maryland, which we're a part of for a pilot program. We received a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And all these are environmental grants. They're small grants. We kind of shied away from doing the big federal grants because it's just a lot of work and we're not getting anything out of it, as I'm sure everyone is aware. Um, so, so how I've developed it is with legislation. Part of that is I crafted legislation that went to our council, our mayor and city council, was passed, that makes organic waste diversion mandatory for all single family and townhome residents effective July of this year. And that we were the first municipality in the United States that independently passed this type of legislation, which basically is composting. But composting is the process. What we're doing is we're creating feedstock, which is the organics diversion. And so California as a state has it, but we are the first municipality to independently. So I wrote that legislation, I presented that legislation, and it did pass. So that was really kind of cool. Legislation about the plastic bags. So it was constantly looking at where is the city of Laurel positioned in the bigger picture of environmental impacts. And what we can do in climate action and sustainability. The sustainability plan was designed, or my goal was to be able to define what sustainability meant, because it's such a big word. It means so many different things to so many different people, and that it is an overused word, and without a clear definition of what it means to you, that it's just words on a page. So my goal was to take it and to create a plan that was more than just words on a page.
Okay.
That actually became something
that people understand, kind of thing.
that people understand, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to go into that more, but I just want to thank you for this kind of introduction to what the role is. And I think it's fascinating that you're able to actually introduce legislation, because of the unique position you're in. The town I live in is not much smaller. In fact, it's probably about 20,000 people or something like that. But because of the way our government is structured, someone in your position probably couldn't introduce legislation and then get it passed and put it into law. It's a much more complicated situation. So you're in a fascinating situation. So I'd like to, if we can, I'd like to talk more about that and just also to position this within this idea of healthy power. So when we talk about healthy power, we're always talking about using power in a way that increases the well-being of everybody involved, which is clearly aligned with this idea of sustainability and communities and ecosystems and all of those kind of things. But we're just, this is for the other listeners really, it's just to say that the word power is a difficult word sometimes, because people sometimes associate it with kind of toxic ways of operating. And also it can be very complicated. We're just trying to use this very simple definition, which is the ability to get one's goals met. That's what we mean by power. And then by healthy power, we mean when we're able to do that in a way that actually increases the power of other people at the same time. So instead of being a kind of win-lose kind of power, we're talking about a win-win kind of power. So I suppose what I'd love to hear from you is, for example, trying to get that kind of clarity. How does getting that kind of clarity of what sustainability means, how does that relate to the idea of healthy power and people working together to achieve these goals?
So when I had my first vision of the plan, I knew that the plan would have two distinct parts to it.
Mm-hmm.
One is the organizational part, the city operations, and that is very specific into what the city's actions can do to help reduce our carbon footprint and also to be financially sustainable. And people
Mm-hmm.
don't, again, it's that concept of what does sustainability mean?
Mm.
And for us, it means to be able to meet the needs of our residents that are here now without compromising the resources for the residents that will be coming and businesses.
Sure.
And in order to do that, there is that financial sustainability piece that is not very sexy, but it's very important to note.
Mm. Mm.
And that
If you run
comes
out of
with,
money, you're in trouble. Yeah.
right, that comes with, and that comes with development, it comes
Mm.
with, property taxes and
Mm.
businesses and
Mm.
prosperity.
Mm.
So that was very kind of cut and dry. And then the community plan, and it's interesting for, so healthy power to me, my vision was that power is meant, my vision was to empower our residents and not have power over them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that concept that drove me and kind of guided me to sociocracy, governance alive, and that model.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a government agency, there's a pitfall that if I speak with my sustainability manager hat on, I've now become the authority. I have now become the person. I've become the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have all the answers. And um, I don't expect myself to have all the answers. As I said, my superpower is not to be the smartest person in the room, but to find the smartest people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my superpower, and I do that very well.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it was important to me to create a landing place, to create a group of our residents and businesses and other nonprofits that would give voice to the future of sustainability in the city of Laurel.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that in a way that was not this power over, which was me at the top saying blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it was more organic and it
Mm-hmm.
was a safe spot and it was, an area that they could really just kind of grow and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, again, it was about empowering
Mm-hmm.
um, our residents to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say that. So a large portion of my budget went to the community framework. And that's where Governance Alive, the facilitators came in.
Mm-hmm.
And we focused on four pillars that we got from the United Nations. So it was people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of fun things. I think it was fun. Yeah, we did like a launch party. We did a wrap party when they finished the program. We had a series of, surveys that went out trying to get feedback. The focus groups themselves met, and again, independent of me. So that was kind of like it worked out, and I'm really happy with the plan, and I think we have a lot of actionable items. But I think what it showcased is that as a government, we did not and have not done a very good job at at getting across like what we have in place, what we have available, how
Mm-hmm.
reachable we are to our residents. And that came through loud and clear. So that was something that we're working on now, actually, because the plan is finalized. It will go,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a resolution, and it will go before the council in June, the mayor and council. They will formally adopt it. And this plan is a living, dynamic document. That's, again,
Hmm.
my vision, that it is, it will change as the residents' needs and desires, and also the resources of the city change. So it's a living document,
Hmm.
unlike, something that is like
Sure,
a master plan, which is, okay,
sure, sure, sure,
this is your blueprint for 10 years.
sure.
This is something different.
So I was going to ask about that. I mean, because I kind of get where you're coming from. You're trying to avoid this kind of power over kind of dynamic, and you're trying to make sure that the citizens are empowered and other people are kind of their voices are coming out. And at the same time, you're working within a government structure where you have a mayor and you have a kind of hierarchy. So I'm just curious to know um, how you've kind of navigated that, and as you say, writing legislation, that's kind of
Mhm.
almost on the other side. I mean, you must be aware of those two kind of sides you're trying to work within, and then practically, what have you done to marry the two, to mix the two together?
Well, and that now's a really good time to ask that question, because we just had our first sustainability action group meeting. So now we're on to the action. So we did the kind
Mm,
of the framework, which was
yeah.
gathering all the information, and now we're into the action, and that happens last Thursday. And I attended, and we had this discussion of, here is the community framework plan. It's the plan, when and I'll send a copy so that people can see it. But it is divided, I would say, into, when you're talking about the pillars, it's divided into what residents can do, what the community can do, what the city can do, and then what the city and the community can do together. So there's very distinct parts of this. I am looked at, or how I have positioned myself, is as a resource, a leader,
Mhm.
and a facilitator as necessary. And but the groups themselves will meet independent of me,
Mhm.
but I'll be the touchstone because
Mhm.
I am their support.
Mhm.
I think that what's important is to remember that when the community does an event in their community, then they represent their community.
Mhm.
When the community does an event that represents a city initiative, they now represent the city.
Mhm.
So my job is to make sure that that messaging, when they're representing the city for our initiatives, is on point. So there's that uh, conversation and relationship that I have with the focus groups. But I do not dictate what their action should be. The plan is already in
Mhm. Mhm.
place, so
Sure,
that's their guidelines, and that came from them. So that came
sure.
from the residents. It's
Yeah.
not me saying this is the way
No,
we
no,
should.
no, I get that. I get so on that side, it's really clear that you're empowering the residents, and the residents are speaking about what they want to do and how they think about it. I absolutely get that. Does it sometimes bump into the other side, to the more hierarchical side of
Yeah,
the of
yes,
governance?
because
What
someone
happens
had
then?
said, yeah, because someone had said at the meeting last Thursday, is, well, we should have people at this event and that event, the Main Street event, the farmers market event, to do demonstrations, et cetera, et cetera. And someone had mentioned to do our farmers market on a weekend. And my response is, okay, well, where are you getting the money to do this?
Mm.
There's a practical side. You are now dictating what city staff can do. And
Uh-huh.
our budgets are set. So we don't have
Okay.
the staff to do that.
Mm.
So it's not telling them that their idea is bad or
Mm,
whatever, but it's giving them that framework
mm,
and that avenue to understand things that they wouldn't necessarily understand.
mm,
I have told them a city will not go and solicit to a church, to a house of a worship, or to a school. But they, as residents, can say to a house of worship, or, can you put, the city is doing a cleanup event, can you put it in the bulletin?
mm.
Can we talk about it,
Okay.
in this group? Can the PTA bring up that there's a book drive, or there's events over at our multi-service center,
Mm,
community gardens, things like that, that when I talk to the focus groups and to the community at a whole, there is that division
yeah.
of what's appropriate for me to do
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
city employee and representing the city.
Yeah.
So there is that, and then there's that. Well, we'll hand out flyers again. Practically, what budget are you using?
Yeah.
So again, so then what I do is they say, well, Michelle, we need blah, 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 we need 100 flyers or something. And then my responsibility, because now this has become a city and focus group, a community event, I find money in my budget or through grants, or go to the mayor and council and beg
Yeah.
and
Okay.
say, we need money for this initiative.
Yeah.
And then I had to present it to them. And I won't always, and I think what I caution them is that it's not always going to be a win. I mean, I want a lot of things that we just can't necessarily get, but the idea is we need to start somewhere.
Yes.
And so I want to, so it's important that they find their voice and their power of, we're going to start. We may not always win, but we know if we don't do anything, we're always going to lose. So
Yes.
let's kind of, and to organically allow the group to come up with things that they want to do.
Yes. That's
To
lovely.
me, that's healthy. To me, that's healthy power.
Yeah, I think
So
uh,
that has become kind of a pilot program for the city, to see, this is something that we can add into our city operation culture.
mhm.
We'll see how that goes.
Well, I was going to say, it's fascinating, and I really get it. And we've talked to, on the podcast, we've talked to a few people who are doing kind of community organizing in the way you've described. Um, but I think what's unique about your situation is that you're kind of working in government. So most of the people that we've spoken to before are kind of in working for different kinds of agencies outside of that space. So, whereas you're directly in it, and I really get the side you're talking about. You're empowering people. On the other side, what do you do when you talk to the mayor and the people on the other side of the process? Are you still in a position where you're having to kind of, as you said, jokingly, you're having to beg and borrow things, or how does it come from there? How is the power operating on the other side?
Well, I do a lot of due diligence. So when I had to, so for the organics recycling program that is mandatory for all residents,
Mm,
it is very expensive to to roll out citywide a program like that. So
sure.
we've been in a phase of, so I started a pilot in 2019. COVID derailed a lot, because we couldn't get, just it derailed a lot. So we
Sure.
kind of had to do a restart then in 2021, 2022. And, but in order to get the kits, which is the kitchen countertop, the outdoor container, and that education piece that I was
Hmm.
talking about, how do you educate someone who did not voluntarily sign up for this? How do you explain to them that you're going to have to do this in a way that is the least controversial that you can come up with, right? Because nobody likes being told what to do, and it's human nature. So it was a challenge to do that, but I think we have a good education kit. All that to say, that's not free. So I had to go to council and say, oh, I need $300,000. Which is not a drop in a bucket. I don't know what the exchange rate is. That's 300,000 US dollars. And that was not all of it, but that was a good chunk. And
how did you do that? How did you manage then to get that through? I suppose that's what I'm asking. I'm asking what your practice was that, I mean, or was it that everything you asked for, Michelle, they just say, yes, Michelle can have as much money as she wants?
That would be so lovely. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of due diligence. There's a lot of, putting the pieces together. It is building that foundation. I do a lot of research before I present. I talk to the vendors. I figure out the rollout. I figure out, what we need. I do get feedback from residents of, does this make sense to you? From a legislative part, I have to present at a work session, which means that I have to write up a document and say, this is what I want. And then it's 2 public meetings, which is at our mayor and council meeting. It could be for legislation. It is for purchases. It just goes through work session and then 1 public meeting. And basically it is explaining that their job as legislators is to focus on the environment and focus on the environment, in addition to that their responsibility is to be fiscally sustainable. And how we do that is by putting these programs in place. So while it looks like it, in the long run, when I run the numbers, we are saving money in addition to reaching our climate action goals, which is reducing methane gas emissions. So a lot of it is educating them in a way that doesn't overwhelm them and go down a rabbit hole, but it's 3-pronged. It's yes, the methane gas emissions at the landfill is the biggest contributor, and the one that is the easiest to control is by reducing food from our landfills. 2, it is about keeping our neighborhoods clean, because you don't have trash overflow, because now you're providing a third source of diversion for your organics, right?
Yep.
And then lastly, which is really what gets them, and I kind of hold that as my trump card, a bad analogy, but my winning card is that as our landfills become more full and there's less place to put them, then our landfills are charging more and more and more because they want less product. So for example, our county landfill or public landfill was $70 a ton at the beginning of last year. January, it went up to $77 a ton. This July, it will go up to $86 a ton, and next July, it'll go up to $96 a ton. You take 1 ton of organics to the composting processing facility is $25 a ton. So what I present to them at the end is, you may not believe that climate change is a thing. You may not believe that, no little raccoon will figure out how to get into the organics, but you will believe that there is a discrepancy in money. And your job as legislators is to be financially sustainable. And in the long run, if we keep on doing what we're doing, we're not going to be able to keep the programs. Services are going to have to be cut at some point.
Yeah, that's very convincing argument economically, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then how do you build in compliance and everything costs money. But once
yeah,
you get it, once you get, get people on board,
yeah.
as politicians, I think, and this is not just my politicians, but all politicians, they don't like frowny faces, so they don't want to hear the complaints. And I've told them point blank, not everyone's going to be happy. You're going to have to just find your backbone and carry on, because if we don't have any consequences, i.e., fines, if people do not follow the rules,
Mm,
um, then you have nothing.
mm, mm,
And and you think of it, I don't know in the UK what they have, but here we have speed cameras and we have red light cameras
mhm,
and we have
mhm,
rules about wearing seat belts and helmet laws for
mhm,
motorcycles.
mhm,
If you run a red light, if you're speeding, then you'll get a fine.
mm.
You get a nice ticket in the mail that has your a picture on it and says,
Yeah,
"Have a good day. Here's your fine."
yeah,
There's no do-overs. You can go to court, blah blah blah, and everything, but chances are you're going to pay it, and you're going to change your behavior. And what I
yeah.
explained to them is that I'm not asking for a belief change, and this is what you got to get your mindset, is that we're not asking people to believe what we believe. We're asking people to change their behavior.
Mhm,
And as legislators, it is important that you support the method that we put in place to get them to that point.
mm, mm,
Um, we're not going to be harsh. No, there's a whole series of things that you can do, but they, they want to get reelected, quite honestly. I mean, and it's not
mhm,
just them.
mm,
It's
mm,
we're going to tell people what they want to hear.
mm,
And if you do that, then you compromise everything.
mm, mm,
And once you start compromising, then a program, no matter how good it is going to fall apart.
mm, mm,
And, so again, I talk to them in terms of, this is what the residents are saying. And, they want a sustainable community, they want a healthy community. This is what the city can do
mm, mm,
to provide that to them.
mm,
And you have to make a decision. And
mm,
these are all public meetings. I mean, and
mm.
I'm recorded, so
You have
so,
to do your due diligence. Make sure you're
so I have to
talking,
do my due diligence. Yeah.
saying the truth. It sounds like you. I mean, part of your practice, then, Michelle. It sounds like is to do the due diligence, but also you're a straight. Sounds like you're a straight talker. You kind of say you tell you understand the politics with a small p that is going on. That the politicians do want to get re-elected, and you're just working within those constraints. So you're just kind of saying this is how it is, and the economics is kind of powerful to back that up.
Yeah. Everyone has a different language, and I
Mm,
think the key to like healthy power or working as a collective is to understand what that language is
yeah.
and to be able to use it effectively.
Hmm.
And I think that I have that ability to do that.
Mm,
So I will switch on and off depending
mm,
on
mm,
kind of which hat I'm wearing.
yeah.
Sometimes I and I find that education, there's always something that someone will find important, and it's our goal, my goal as an educator, as a sustainability manager, really, to find out what that is,
Mm,
to be able to speak to people in a language that makes sense to them, and then build on that throughout the community.
mm,
Because once
lovely.
the community hears that it's coming from them, then that increases their investment in
Mm.
the process. And
And their
that's what
self-belief,
yeah, and
presumably.
self-belief, right?
So then they can do the next thing if they
Yeah,
know that they had the power to get whatever they wanted.
right.
Mm, Really
So
good.
that's what we're doing now with the the focus groups. And again, this is kind of the framework that they're like, well, they want to meet again at a city facility. And I said, that's fine, but you do need to go through me because we have a certain structure that
Sure.
we follow.
Sure.
And when you talk to the attendant or this, they have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
So they're going to charge you. And, so and I sent that out to them and I said, this is just some housekeeping and da 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 da. And then they responded, yeah, we need this. Thank you, Michelle. And so I did my part and I sent it off to my point of contact, and then I'll confirm with them. And then they're fine. If I say, okay, they need it for the next 3 weeks, we get that set up and then that's it.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't clean up, I'm going to hear about it and then I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, now you're going to have to meet at your house because you left a mess. But I mean, these are people who are responsible adults.
Sure.
I think that the other thing that we're doing, and I think it's really important, is we're getting our high school students involved. Um, and so that they can see what healthy power is, so that they can see that they are part of the future and the community and their voice matters. And I especially am interested in, where they want to put their energy and their focus, which is different than a working adult,
Of
because their
course.
view of the world is much different. And I think that their sense of power is much different. And I think it's important. And what I want to nurture is where their voice is and help them find it. So we're going to work much more with the volunteers, especially from our local high schools. Elementary schools are great advocates, but they're too little. I can't send them out in the world. Whereas
Yeah.
I can, and the group that I'm working with right now from Laurel High School is a fantastic group of young men, and I am guessing women. I haven't seen any young girls there, but there must be. It's through ROTC, which is, I don't know the equivalent in the UK, but it's like a precursor for military
Okay.
or military. So it's something that they
Hmm.
work on
Hmm.
in high school.
Hmm.
And gives them that sense of purpose and discipline and getting out into the community. And
Hmm.
so this is another way
Hmm.
to encourage them.
Great. Well, again, I mean, those are the people that are going to be living in this world in the future. So it's very
Right.
important to be working with them. We're just about coming to the time we need to stop, if that's okay with you. I just wondered, is there anything else you want to kind of add? I mean, I will, if you could send me that PDF or whatever it
Yep.
is, I'll add that in the notes of the show and so forth. But is there anything else you'd like to add, Michelle?
I'm really proud of what we've been able, as a community, been able to accomplish. I'm very
Hmm.
proud of our sustainability plan and how it speaks to everyone. And I think we have done a good job of capturing what's important. Again, it is long after I leave. I expect my goal is to have this plan as a living plan
Hmm.
and to be revised, updated. Um, and I've said to the community what I said last Thursday is that, this plan will live or die by the breath that they give to it.
Hmm.
So you breathe life into it and it will live.
Hmm.
Um, just kind of shut your eyes or say, oh, I don't have time, or it's not me, or somebody else will do it. And then the plan dies. And really they have no one to blame but themselves because,
Hmm.
we have it. It's right there.
Hmm.
I think sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations with people, but I think in that respect, it really did open their eyes that they do have a lot of personal power. They have a lot that they still can contribute to the plan, and that they have a good partner in me. They might not
Good.
always get the answer that they want because it's not always going to be a yes, but I am working with them, and I am on their side to create a healthy community.
That's lovely. Thank you. And thank you so much for your time again. Really been nice talking to you. Maybe we'll get you back in a year or so and see how things are developing with the young people, if that would be okay.
And I appreciate you spreading the word about what we're doing, and I'm happy to send the plan, and
Great.
I
Right.
appreciate your time.
You too. Thanks ever so much, Michelle.
Okay.
And yes, for everybody else, we will be sending out some new episodes shortly. So watch your normal space, your normal podcast player, and you'll see those episodes turn up. And that's it for today.